To understand views, listen to this. Usually we have client machines. This could be your phone, it could be your laptop, it could be another API. And on this device, you have a browser that you use to send a request to a Django application. Okay, and this Django app is probably running on a server somewhere on the internet. Okay, this could be, for example, on AWS or even just on your machine. Okay, and you have your Django app running on this server. This request is technically called an HTTP request. An HTTP request. Okay, an HTTP request. And when your Django application processes this request successfully, in return, there is a response that is given back to the client. Okay, this response is technically referred to as an HTTP response. These responses are managed by Django Views. So a Django View is responsible for handling a request and returning a response. So the request, of course, will have information. For example, who is sending this request? Are there any headers in this request? That is there a text? Is there an image? And so on and so forth. And of course, the response has information concerning whether the user sent correct information or the user was missing something or something went wrong with the server, among others. So let's see in code how this applies. In Django, you can create a view in two ways, using a function or using a class. So that gives us two types. The first one is called a function-based view, or what is known as FBVs. And then we also have what is called a class-based view. And like I told you, a view is simply responsible for returning a response after it has processed the request it has received. So to create a function-based view, you simply create a function and call this one hello world. Okay, and of course it accepts a request like we know and must return a response. To return a response properly, you shall need something from django.http import http response. Okay, and then we can return an http response, and in this case we can simply print a simple message saying hello world. This is a very basic function-based view. In another case, you can return also not only a string, you can return an HTML document. Okay, for example, I can say define a function called greet_user, and this function, of course, like I told you, must take a request first, and then we can accept the person's name. Okay, and after that we can return a page. We need to render it using this function called render, and render is imported from Django.shortcuts. So we shall have a response, but in this response this time we're going to return an HTML page, and this of course takes the request. It has to know for which request am I going to return a response. So to do that, you pass a request first of all, and after that you specify the HTML page. I can say greetings.html, and then finally we can take in some data. Okay, all these templates, all these HTML files or templates can take some data. This data is passed via what is called the context object. Okay, in our context is simply a dictionary of key value pairs, and we can say the username of this person. Okay, the username is simply this username that we got from the function, as simple as that. So let's now look at class-based views. Class-based views are also used to process a request. They accept a request and return a response. And to create one, of course, you need to define a Python class. And say, for example, you have a class that is going to list articles, okay, of your website. Say article list view. And these class-based views are usually used to provide reusable functionality through inheritance. Let us assume we have a model, a basic model that is called article, say article inheriting from models dot model, and I can simply make this empty for now. Okay, and then we want to list articles. Okay, to avoid going through a lot of work, we can reuse what is existing in Django. Django has something called a list view, and we can import it up here called from Django.views.generic import list view. Okay, so this list view will turn our class into a class-based view and help us to list articles, of course. And how do you do that? You just specify, for example, the model. You see the model that we're interested in is the article model that we just created. And of course, to have it, we need to import it. Say from dot models import article. And then you also need to specify the template in which these articles, for example, if your template is an HTML file, you'll say the template name, template underscore name will be equals to articles.html, and this class called article list view, once someone tries to access a URL that is tied to this view, we'll use this model to access to fetch all the articles from the database and render them in this template. And to render them in this template, it will need a context. You see, we talked about context up here. It will need a context variable that it will use. For example, up here on 913, the context variable will be username. Also, right here, we need to specify the context variable name. And to do that, we shall use a public attribute called context underscore object name, which will be equals to, can call it articles, as simple as that. And this is what Django will use to populate all the articles in this template. Another basic way you can use a class-based view is by, if you want to display only one article. So this a list view is for displaying many articles. Okay, and then if you want to display only one article, then in that case you need what is called a detail view. So all this is simply inheritance, helping you to reuse what has already been created. So we can say class detail, I can call it article detail view, and this will inherit from the detail view. And then just like up here, we can simply have a model. You need the model, okay, and of course you need the template that is going to store, or that is going to hold the simple article. Okay, article underscore detail.html. Of course, this is just a tutorial to explain to you the views, but I have not created them. But of course, in a real project, you'll have to create these two templates. So that's how class-based views work, and that's what they are all about. The next step is to connect your views to URLs, which simply means you create urls.py in your app. And then we can simply have an import, say from django.http import path. Okay, and then we can import everything, say from our current directory, import views. Okay, then of course you have to define your URL patterns, which is a list. And then for the function based views, we can simply define the first one having a path to hello. Okay, and then you can say this is views dot hello world. So every time someone accesses hello / views dot hello world view will be responsible for accepting that request and returning a response. And you can give it a name, and you say the name is name equals to hello. Then we have another one. Okay, can call it great / and this is going to accept a username. Okay, remember a username. So we put this into angle brackets. Okay, and then we say user name like that, and then define the type. This username is a string, so we say str : then after that we specify the view by saying views dot greet user, and then the name is simply greet. Okay, and call it greet. And then after that, we now have, I think that's all. We now can now go to the class-based views and connect them and say the first path will be articles for listing all articles. Can I spell articles correctly? Articles / and then shall say this is views dot article list view. Then to make this work, we have to say dot as view, because this is a class. Dot as view. So there's a method called as view on the article list view, and that is given to us through inheritance of the list view class. And then we can call this article list. Sorry, name equals to article dash list, like that. And then after that, we have finally the last one, which will be articles / its ID. Okay. For this, we can actually take, we can say we're going to take the primary key of an article, which will be called the pk for primary key, and the type of the pk is an integer. Okay, so we shall say int integer full colon. Okay, and then we can simply now, of course, there's a / here I'm missing, and also up here there's a / missing, and then we can say views dot article detail view, and the name of this view will be article dash detail. As simple as that. I have to fix the spelling of article. You can enhance your views using what is called decorators. Let's assume you had a function or a view, which is a function-based view called profile. Okay, and of course it will accept the request and then simply returns a response. Let's say return render, and this will have a request and then profile. Okay, template, which is profile.html. So I need to fix this. This is render, like so. So assuming you wanted this to be accessed only by users who have been authenticated, only authenticated users can access this view. The easiest way to do this is simply by decorating this view, and you can decorate it using what is called a decorator. Okay, and we can import one of the commonest decorators used in Django from django.contrib.auth. I think is it decorators? Yes, import login required. So we can scroll down and say at login required. As simple as that. By simply doing this, I have enhanced this view, and you can go to the details of this and see that this decorator is simply another function. Okay, and it's being used to decorate our profile view. And like you see the comment here, or the doc string says decorator for views that checks that the user is logged in, redirecting to the login page if necessary. Another example would be assuming you have a view called submit form, and of course this will accept a request and then return an HTTP response, this time simply saying form submitted. Okay, so this can have, we can decorate it by having this another decorator from Django, I think is it .views, the decorator. So if you don't have to memorize this, it's because I've done this many times, that's why I'm able to remember, but you can simply Google it or check the documentation. Require post. Okay, so I can come down here and say at require post, like that. So this will make sure that only post requests are allowed. Okay, no get requests. And of course you can look at its definition if you want to. The common view patterns simply include listing objects. Okay, like we've already seen, but I'll just repeat this. So assuming you have, for example, a model say class book, okay, the inherits from models.model, and let's make it empty for now. So this is not a project, and then we can simply have a view here, which is a function based view called book list accepts a request, and I can simply list all the books, and we can say books will be equals to, so we need to import that model. From models, import book. Then down here we can simply say books book dot objects dot all, and then we can return render and pass in the request. Assuming we have a template called books, shall say books, maybe list.html, not a template called books, but rather a directory called books having a template called list.html, and then we can pass all these books via the context in a dictionary like so. The key will be books and the value obviously books. That's the first pattern like I showed you earlier. Another one is simply to have a detailed view like we saw up above, but just reiterate this, and we can have for the same, we say we have a book detail function that takes in a request and simply returns a response. Okay, and before we return a response, we need to pick that particular book detail. Of course, we shall have the request, and to get that particular book, we shall need its primary key, or simply pk. And to do that, we can say book will be equals to a function called get object of 404, and we need to import it. So I think it's from Django.shortcuts. I'll say get object of 404. So get object of 404. So in other words, this function will try to pick a book or tell the user that the book has not been identified. So we shall pass in the book model and then pk. So this says on the book model, try to fetch one book for its pk. If it does not exist, then return F404. And after that, we can simply render, of course, render has to accept the request, and then also, like you already know, a template. Our template will be in the directory called books / detail.html, and then finally we pass the book to our context. We shall say book :book. I not to confuse you, this is just like I did earlier. You can simply say context equals to, and copy this entire dictionary and paste it there and say comma context. So this and up here is just the same thing. Okay, only that this time I put the dictionary into a variable called context. Okay, finally, another common pattern but not the least is form handling. And with form handling, assuming we have a function we called book create that accepts the request, and then will return. Okay, initially if it's just a get request, it should return just our books. Okay, a form having books. So in a directory called books template form.html. Okay, so this is show you that you can organize your templates using directories. And of course, like we know, render must take request as the first argument, and also at the end there should be a context or simply a form. Okay, so I'll say form. So we need to define this form. I can simply create here forms.py and say class form. So this is just a dummy, okay? A dummy form. Maybe just add some, let's say from Django import forms. Then say forms.model form. So this is not a form tutorial, but just to give you a small detail on that. And then we can maybe call it book form, And then in our view here, we can import it. We say from.forms import model form, import book form. Okay, and then we can now come here and say our form will be equals to book form, like that. Okay, and we're done with that. And for example, if someone sends information in a post request, we can check for that and say if request dot method is equals to posts, the post request, then we can then populate our form with that data and say book form, populate it with requests dot post. So request dot post will have the data. And after that, we can check if the form is valid. We say if form dot is valid. So there's this method called is valid on the form, like that. So if it returns true, then we can save, say form dot save, and then we can return a redirect. Okay, return and we redirect to some other page, maybe to the book dash list view, which would mean redirecting to this view here. And of course, this has to be defined in your URLs that py, and this is a shortcut. Okay, we can say from Django.shortcuts redirect, import redirect. Okay, but all in all, render, redirect, and also HTTP response, return HTTP responses. Okay, let it not confuse you. So in simple terms, if you accept an HTTP response, an HTTP request and returns an HTTP response, as simple as that. Because when you redirect here, it will take you to this view, which will eventually return an HTTP response. So some of the best practices are that your views should be focused on a single responsibility. Secondly, use class-based views for common patterns like listing, detail, create, update, delete. The third is use function views for simple and specific functionality. The fourth is always validate user input and handle errors gracefully.